Hey, the Pavetta rifle. Drop the gun! Oh, shit! I'm hit. I'm okay. But not gonna die.
Welcome to Badges, Bullets, and Blunders. I'm the host, Travis Harless. Before we get started, if you'd like to support the podcast, go check out our friends at Slick Sleeve Syndicate. Never forget where you came from. Today, sitting with me is Officer Reagan Selman, and we're also going to be speaking with Pat from Police Post. Pat, can you do us a favor? Tell us about yourself. Where were you a police officer? How long were you an officer? What were some of the assignments you worked as a police officer? And then, what is it that you're into now?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Pat. I own Apex Training Concepts. I'm also on the Police Post team. I was an officer for 7 years in Southwest Florida. I was a SWAT team leader, narcotics detective. I worked homicide. Had a bunch of different assignments there. I was pretty privileged in my career. Left there, started doing this full time. I've been in the Army also in a mixture of components, active, reserve, and guard since 2002. Still currently in the guard down here in Florida. And then just kind of consulting for other companies on the side as well.
Cool. Yeah, the way that we linked up is there was a search warrant that Reagan and I were involved in, and our department posted the video from the search warrant online, and it kind of blew up and went viral. And there was a lot of people commenting on it, and Police Post Training Instagram got a hold of the video, and also you got it sent to you, and then you reposted it and had some comments, and then you and I started kind of talking back and forth about the video, and decided, let's just have you come on the podcast and we can just talk about it there. That way you can explain it in a little bit more detail. The comment section on Instagram isn't a good forum for long form discussion.
Right.
So I thought it'd be better if we just chit chatted and talked about it in person, or at least over Zoom. So I'd like to play the video, and when we play it up, we're not going to run any audio on it because we don't want to get a copyright strike. There was a big hit from my sixth grade years when Gangster's Paradise by Coolio came out, and it was like the hottest song of the year. Anyways, we had to turn that off so that we don't get a copyright strike with YouTube. But Nick's going to pull it up. We're going to play the video, and I'll talk through it as we go. I think his is a shorter version of it. It's about a minute long, right, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is about a minute long. We'll discuss it. This is a narcotics search warrant that Reagan and I and the rest of our team were helping one of our street impact teams serve. It was their warrant. We're, I didn't tell you, Pat, but we're part of an apprehension team. So we do mainly violent criminal apprehension, but we also help out on search warrants quite a bit. And so when we got requested by our impact unit, and they do like quality of life, they deal mainly with we have a lot of homeless transients here in California. And they deal mainly with the homeless population, and this specific team focuses a lot on the drugs and drug sales that impact the homeless population. So they work their own cases, and they work them back from simple possession. They'll get to the mid-level, to the low level, then the mid-level dealers. And when the cases get big enough, then they'll turn them over to our major narcotics division. But this is like a mid-level dope dealers in one of our common drug dealer motels, where a couple of they had, I think, warrants for 3 rooms on this day, and we were responding to assist, or we'd briefed it up, and then we're moving into assist, and then this is what happens as we move into serve this warrant of these 3 rooms. So we'll play it. Yeah, well, once you sure, if you need to pause it, I'll have you pause it. But it's going to start off with, you'll see the suspect vehicle pulling out of a parking spot, and it's going to go eastbound through this parking lot as we're pulling in. So one of our units in the white truck pulls up to the front. Some of the officers step out to go contact the driver. And as that's happening, Reagan's truck actually is pulling around to the back, that gray truck you see pulling up to the rear. And then they make contact with the driver, remove the driver from the vehicle. And then the next thing that happens is they'll start moving up to make contact at the 3 rooms that we had the warrants for. So you see officers staging these doors, and then our breacher, using a KBT, a kinetic breaching tool, comes up and he breaches these locked doors. Then they'll make entry and clear these rooms. So some of that. And these are, it's funny, Pat, you're probably familiar with this when you're on a training site and you go to do a room entry and it's like an empty room. It's a whole lot different than an actual occupied hotel room.
100%. Yeah.
There's stuff trimmed behind the door, the bed, and there's just shit all over the floor. So yeah, they're clearing these rooms right now. And these are all just like standard hotel rooms. So it's one room with a bed and there's like a little kitchenette area with like a countertop and a bathroom and a small closet. And each of these rooms are all the same. So we're almost to the end of it. I don't know if it's going to show. We cut out the part where they're throwing the stuff out the window. Okay. And then in the original one that our department had posted and that you reposted, it shows some objects that are being thrown out of the back window, and it turns out to be like 2 guns and a bunch of dope. So yeah, anyways, before we started recording, you were talking about it and I cut you off. I apologize for being rude to cut you off. And I wanted you to just tell us how you got the video and then like what you saw and what your thoughts were when you reposted it and what you had said and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I get DMs from guys from all over the country, always sending me body cam, always sending me videos. And, I try and come up with, well, let me preface with the one thing I don't do is I don't like beating up on operations because 1, you can't do it from a clip unless you have the entire, incident. And then 2, there's a lot of obviously context that could be missing. So what I'd like to do at times is I have a generalized group of topics that I plan on talking about from a training perspective. And then sometimes I go through videos and I'm like, oh, hey, like this looks like this is generally, kind of represents the point I'm trying to make. So a bunch of people had sent me that particular video and they were like, look at this hot garbage. And to be fair, I didn't get, I don't even think it's professional to call it hot garbage because again, a lot of things are missing. But what I was
okay. We say stuff like that all the time, so it's okay. It doesn't hurt our feelings. Right. I promise.
No, but just at the end of the day, like just be from a professional standpoint. It's you've seen it. Like we discussed this before. The internet community in the comments sections is like, this is trash. This is shit. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. And I've always prided myself on my platform on not doing that. What caught my eye was the caption that the department posted. Right, like it was a win. And in watching the video, yeah, I saw some things that I was like, oh, maybe that vehicle takedown could have been better. Maybe this, maybe this. So I used it because I thought it was illustrative of, you need to debrief your wins too. Like, and, from my own perspective, as an officer and a detective, we would go on operations that were hot trash. But everything went well, and we didn't make any adjustments because, hey, it was a win, right? But you knew that win wasn't really attributed to anything you did.
Yeah, you never mistake good luck for good tactics.
Exactly. So I was like, you know what? People can learn from this. And, I saw all the comments that I was like, kind of like, all right, maybe this is a little clickbait, but, this will probably get good engagement. And then you commented. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I even told the other guys, like, hey, dude, like the team leader hit me up and he wants to talk about it. So I think it's an awesome opportunity for dialogue.
Sure.
Because there were a couple of points that I saw that you can talk about, but you can't really speak to the whole thing, right? And my 2 biggest things that I like to talk about are vehicle takedowns, number 1, because there's the reasons everybody says they did what they did, and then there's the real reasons that nobody wants to admit. Like, so on the vehicle takedown side of things, it's like, hey, man, we all know we're supposed to be making contact with that vehicle. Right, we're supposed to pin that in and not get it to move 100%. But what we don't talk about is we know that administration is going to tear our ass because we broke a car. End of story, right? Like everybody knows that. Anybody who said that's a lie is outrageous, right? Except maybe the DEA because I've seen them crash a ton of cars. Like you don't want to wreck the car. There's probably policy in place that says you can't box things in. So what do we do when we're on the street? Is I didn't really box him in. He had an out. Like I've heard guys say this thing. But then I'm like, all right, well, that's great. You're playing a word game to get around policy, but then we're running up to a deadly weapon ultimately. Right. So like a lot of times good tactics and staying within policy aren't co-aligned either. So that was my major takeaway on the vehicle takedown. And then, I try not to get too much into the CQB debate. But, the big takeaway for me was like, hey, slower isn't always better. That doesn't necessarily mean deliberate versus dynamic, but slower isn't always better.
Yeah, so on the vehicle, I'm curious what your thoughts are on like a vehicle takedown. So just like you said, there's a lot of context that's missing because it's just a click the video that our department posted is a kind of a clickbaity sort of like, get people to enjoy the takedown, and then, it's a clickbaity sort of clip. But um, to just kind of describe that hotel a little better, there's a main north and south running thoroughfare that's to the east of what you see on the video, and that hotel is like a U-shaped, and there's one way in and one way out. So there's no way to get there. They have to go eastbound through that parking lot and to get out of the exit to get back on in the same entrance exit point, which was blocked off before we pulled in. Um, when we were going to serve this warrant, we weren't planning on doing a vehicle takedown, and it's not an excuse, right? But the plan was to just pull up, to jump out of the vehicles and to go hit these 3 doors. But as we were moving in, we had our drone up that was watching it, and like, hey, suspect's getting in the car right now and he's leaving. And so then it kind of changed things. Like literally as we were pulling up, like he's going to leave. And so he backs out, and so this was sort of, and again, not making excuses, but this was like more of a hasty vehicle takedown. There wasn't a pre-planned like jump out that we were going to do on these people. And so you'll see that white truck pulls up to the front to kind of block it off. And then Reagan was kind of in like a sort of like a conga line of vehicles pulling up, and he had to hurry up to scoot around to get to the back to block him off from the backside. But I'm curious. So you're talking about like actually going bumper to bumper to pin a car. And I totally like the idea of doing that because you eliminate space to prevent people from escaping or prevent them from using the vehicle as a weapon. But the problem is, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, is like, department policy. It's like we're not allowed to do pit maneuvers, and we're not allowed to pin vehicles. And then the other thing is we do like quite a bit of like takedowns, which search warrants, vehicle takedowns. And if we were going bumper to bumper like every single time, we would be needing new cars like quite often.
Right. It's one of those things where, again, not even talking about this specific takedown, right? Like just talking vehicle takedowns in general. And tons of other dudes that I know on like way crazier units are like, bro, and I agree with this. It's my own sentiment that if you're going to do vehicle takedowns, that needs to be trained over and over and over and over again, right? That way, like, you're like, oh, hey, let's do a hasty takedown. And then, as a team leader, like, oh man, you know what? Like, we really don't do it. Like maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we don't put that in our toolbox, right? Like, all right, hey man, let him go. We'll get him later. And again, not referencing this specific incident. I'm talking generally across the board in terms of vehicle takedowns. And again, I work for an agency where we weren't allowed to block. We weren't allowed to pin. We would get our asses chewed if we did do it. And we did it at times, and we got our asses chewed. It was one of those like, do what your ass can handle kind of things. So I get the hardship and the points of frustration in doing it. But when you're not actually pinning a vehicle, what are you really relying on? You're solely relying on suspect compliance. And that's like that's part one. That's part one to the equation, right? Like part two is, okay, we've pinned his vehicle. Now we need to hope he doesn't shoot at us because we're coming up to this vehicle and he's got 0% tints and we have no clue what the hell is going on inside. We may have a little situational awareness as to what's going on. So we know one guy got in, but we don't know if he's armed. We really don't know. Yeah. So a lot of vehicle takedowns, and I've been on these as well, where you're like, I just hope he doesn't fight back. I hope he doesn't do this. As you're running up to the car, you're like, I hope he doesn't mash the gas because I'm going to be in a world of shit. And I actually have a friend who was killed on a vehicle takedown. And do I think it was done improperly? I think it could have been done better. Yeah. And I think that law enforcement as a whole, the lack of doctrine or the lack of uniformity or the lack of cohesiveness in terms of how vehicle takedowns are done, I think that contributes to things like that, right? Because we're more worried about the administrative side of let's not bang up this vehicle. I don't want to pay to fix it. Liberal, whatever BS policy. Yeah. And when it's very easy in law enforcement. When an officer gets killed, even if an officer has done something, let's not say they did something wrong. Let's just say there was a tactical mistake that happened that may have contributed to that. Well, it's just easier to blame the bad guy. Yeah. Right? It's easier to blame.
No, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. And it's people have a hesitancy to critique the dead because they don't want to come across as like disrespecting the dead. Right. And I always say like, hey, if I get killed doing something stupid, I want you guys to deeply analyze the stupid mistakes that I made that caused my death, please, so that you don't do that yourself.
Right. And that's my ultimate goal. And, it rubs people the wrong way sometimes. And sometimes I get nasty messages like, oh, hey, it's the bad guy's fault. He's still committing crime. Like, look, there was nothing dishonorable about what happened. But as a whole, if we're serious about officer safety, well, then we need to have these hard discussions. Or we need to take these little things and just point them out and say, like, hey, look, this is the real reason things are going well because suspect decided to comply. That's the real reason a lot of things go well.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, so on vehicle takedowns, do you factor in like nature of the crime? So like if it's like a homicide suspect who's on the run, who knows he's wanted, who's fled before, and we caught him out in the open and here it is. It's like all day long. Yeah, we're gonna, I don't care schmolicy, I'm down to, bumper pin that thing and ram him in nice and tight. But the nature of the crime, like if we're talking like it's different here in California, and California drugs aren't really illegal.
Right.
so like a dope sales is a felony, right? But it's not that big of a deal. Like, figuratively speaking, it's a felony, but it's not that serious of a crime. And so if we're dealing with just a drug crime, right? And again, in California, he's probably going to get some probation and get let go if he doesn't have like multiple priors. Probably not even doing any serious jail time. So like, we're not going to be like doing something that's going to be damaging to his car, to our car, over something that's not really that big of a crime. Like we still need to get him out of the car. We still need to get search him. We still need to collect evidence. We still need to enforce the law. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that nature of the crime for the type of maneuver that's being used? I don't want to call it force, but and it's sort of like force, but the type of takedown that you're going to be doing.
Right. And you're 100% correct, right? Like in Florida, things are a little more conservative. You can get away with a little more. Obviously, California is a different beast. But again, you said something that it kind of speaks to how I feel about it. You're like, look, the guy's going to get probation anyway, right? Like that's how I look at things. Like, are we really going to push a bad situation and potentially something go wrong over something I know homie's going to get probation over? No.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's do this. Let's get a marked car behind him, light him up, see if he stops. He doesn't stop. Fuck him, let him go. You know what I mean? Like, it's not worth pushing. It's not worth pushing a bad envelope. And I only say that when we're putting human tissue in and around vehicles. You know what I mean? Like, it just that's my own personal preference. If they stop, they stop. If they don't, they don't. But now, if we start putting bodies and vehicles in close proximity to each other, and he wants to fight us, now we have a potential issue.
Yeah.
And then, and again, like I'm friends with a good amount of cops on the West Coast, and your use of force policy is way more stringent. And to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, you get into a shooting in that capacity, you're going to be answering some questions, right? It was a low-level crime. It was this, it was that. He didn't present a weapon, and that's why I'm asking. I'm not saying, but just some LAPD guys that I know had told me. So and I know there was that case law regarding felony stops on stolen vehicles just recently that came out of the Ninth Circuit, where they were kind of saying it wasn't stolen vehicles weren't justified to use a felony stop. And so for me, from my perspective, I'm like, you know what, man, it's not even worth it, man. Just let it go. Like, unless we absolutely have to catch this dude. If we don't have to catch this dude, just let it go.
Okay. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Yeah, and that's what I was also getting at too, is like, if we're dealing with like a lower level crime, I won't say a low level crime, but because we're never going after like, shoplifters or something. It's a little shade there. Sorry, Orsi. But a drug crime. If we were to the other side of it is if we were also to like bumper pin someone on every time we did a drug takedown, like. I would say if I were a defense attorney, right, and I was on the other side, like, you're not even giving my client the opportunity to comply before you start ramming his car. If I'm the defense attorney, I would say like, and that's actually kind of true. Like here in California, 9 times out of 10, like you said, if you were to just do a regular traffic stop, the guy's going to pull over. He might try to like conceal the dope or destroy it or something, but he's going to yield and he's going to comply most of the time. Sometimes, yeah, they will run for sure. But if they're going to comply 9 times out of the 10, it's hard to justify like doing physical damage to some citizen's vehicle and into a department issued vehicle every single time we're going to go make an arrest for this type of crime. You know what I mean? Again,
Agreed.
if this is a homicide suspect, priors for running, we know he knows he's on the run and all of that, then yeah, all day. But on some of these lower level crimes, like again, if I was a defense attorney, I'd be like, well, you could have just told him to stop and he would have just surrendered, and it's probably true. But
Mhm.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
So I made a post about this morning because the second part of this is, and you guys come at it with the same kind of view that I do. Like anytime I was doing something, I was thinking, what would a defense attorney say about this? Like, you didn't even want to ask my client. You didn't want to ask my client anything. You didn't want to give him a chance. You just wanted to make an arrest. Like I've had it said to me, right? Like, so that's going through your head as you're doing it. But again, it's like we're worried about policy. We're worried about the court case. So the case and officer safety are not co-aligned, right? Like, and I've said this on a million times, like just even on a search warrant of a residence or a structure, if we're worried about catching a guy in the room with the dope, we're going to do it the most dangerous way to save the investigation. So we're sacrificing officer safety to save the investigation. And we're doing the same thing. And the post I made this morning was part 2 of the vehicle takedown thing, where it's like, all right, so the CQB debate, we don't walk past doors. You don't just blindly walk past an open door or even a closed door. Maybe some instances you could justify it, right? I can think of some. But so cops know that, right? Like that's taboo. We don't walk past the threshold without covering it, plating it, assessing it, whatever. But when we're doing a vehicle takedown, we have no problem running up to a door that we cannot see through, but they can see us. And to me, it's so hypocritical. I'm like, how does that make sense? We just run up to tinted windows, but we won't walk past the door that we can see through. Like, dude, homie is on the other side.
Yeah.
And he could potentially just shoot, which is how my friend was killed.
And
right?
we're not trying to defend us running up to the car at all. That's a conversation that we have all the time.
Yeah.
And typically before we actually do a deliberate VCT where we know we're about to execute a VCT, we'll have that discussion and say, hey, like, do not run up to the car, because you always have to say it to the group because there's going to be somebody.
Someone's going to do it.
As soon as we get the car pinned, somebody's running up to the car. I don't know why. It's a conversation that has to happen every time. With this one, though, to go to this one, it's just there was no intent to do a VCT. We're already on the move to execute this search warrant, right? We're basically pulling into the parking lot. At that time, we're getting UAS information. Hey, primary's getting in the car. He's taking off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, shit, we got to contact him now, right? So there's really no coordination and not trying to defend anything because it does get debriefed and it has been talked about.
Yeah.
It's just that's the way this one happened. He couldn't have got out of the parking lot. There was 2 or 3 black and whites blocking the exit anyway. So, I mean, at that point, we kind of had to contact the guy. Should have called him out, didn't, but
yeah, probably should have stayed back and called him out from the car.
To be totally clear, this is when I say these things, it is not like, hey man, I'm talking about your operation. I thought that video exemplified a lot of things that we have been trying to convey to the industry as a whole. So for me, vehicles are a very hot button topic. So I'm like, hey, like this vehicle, this clip literally shows us not pinning the vehicle and giving it room to move, putting organic tissue close to that vehicle in between a bunch of vehicles, and we're running up to a window. I'm talking about the generalized topic. In no way, shape, or form am I throwing shade at anybody, right? Because, dude, I've made mistakes too. I've made mistakes on operations, 100%. I still remember some of the mistakes I made, and they haunt me, right? Because I'm like, oh man, that was so stupid. Can't believe I did that. So I know what it's like, and in no way, shape, or form, am I throwing shade? Which is why I was just like, hey, like this was a win. This operation went well, but we need to start looking at some of the contributing factors as to why operations would go well versus don't go well. And what does that always come to? Above all else, it comes down to, number one, suspect compliance, right? Because the only thing you could do is hope they comply, which we all do. We hope they comply, but then we just layer on control measures to mitigate the kind of resistance that they can throw at us. So as a vehicle, a vehicle takedown, okay, cool. I'm hoping he complies. I'm hoping he stops. But if I'm kind of sure, if I think he may run, I need to put a control measure in place to make sure he doesn't run. Okay, great. What's number 3? I need to make sure that my guys are safe behind cover, because again, this is like one of those things. We preach felony takedowns on stolen vehicles, which are generally pretty lame, and they generally end pretty uneventful. But the second you're in a pursuit or the second something crazy happens, we all rush the car.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like pick a side of the fence and stay on it.
Yeah.
And again, not not a problem that's specific to your agency or my old agency. It's all agencies.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been anywhere that
And
doesn't.
we agree on that for sure. When we debriefed it, we said, yeah, we probably should have stayed back behind our cover from our vehicles and called that guy out and give him the opportunity to see what he did and then make a plan from there. It was pretty hasty to rush. So yeah, I think we're pretty much in line on that topic. The only issues, like I said, is that we're just not allowed to physically, pin. So
I know that pain, but again, that's not a you guys' problem. Like if you follow my page, I'm constantly going after administrators because I went to a case law class. I went to a case law class years ago, and I remember the former prosecutor was like, "Dude, the state will let you get away with a lot. It's your agency that restricts you," and that's the truest thing in the world, right? Like the agency's constantly coming out with new policy. Can't do this, can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. But what they're not realizing is the second and third order effects of taking effective tactics away, like a pin, leads to an increase in officer jeopardy, and we're decreasing the amount of officer safety we can implement. And that's a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Not for you guys. It's a problem at the higher level, at the think tank machine up in agency headquarters somewhere.
Yeah, it's a balance between like the on all these things. It's a balance between the officer safety and I don't know the level of or amount of force that you're going to use, because you could run that argument all the way to like an extreme measure and say just a routine traffic stop for a vehicle code violation with no prior knowledge. Right now, technically, there could be someone in there who wants to do you harm. We've all seen thousands of those videos where the cops just pulled him over for expired registration. He walks up and all of a sudden a gunfight breaks out. We've seen that. But you could take that logic and say, well, since it is possible that this could result in, a deadly force encounter, like we should be doing X, Y, and Z like levels of force. You know what I mean? And I would argue it's like, well, there's a balance between like what like what this person is wanted for and what level of force that we're willing to use. You know what I mean?
Great. And it's been my experience. I don't know about you guys. Like the craziest crap I saw came from the dumbest violations.
For sure, yeah.
The murderers and hardened gangbangers, man, they just give up, just talk to you, BS. They're like, this guy's a killer, and he just walks out, cuffs up, no problem. And so I like my own spidey sense is always like, man, it's the dumb stuff that gets you. It's the stupid stuff.
We say all the time, so like on our team, it's me and then 6 officers, and we just go after violent criminals, people wanted for murders and shootings and stabbings and just all the most heinous stuff, right? And some people will ask me, like a family member, like, "Oh, it sounds scary. It's kind of dangerous," and I'll like laugh. It's like, actually, it's like what's way more dangerous is being a solo police officer on a midnight shift. We, like there's 7 of us, and we all work together and we train together, and we're all on the same page, and we dictate where we're going to do the takedown, how we're going to do the takedown, and we dictate all the terms of that. If you're just some solo police officer, you pull somebody over at 2 a.m., you have no idea. There's so many variables that you have no control over. I'm like, that's way more sketchy than what we do.
Right. And, I started Apex Training Concepts, and the mission objective was I'm going to revolve it around a patrol officer. Because having been on the other side of the coin, I think a lot of guys don't even realize, and even in the military, right? Everybody wants to emulate tier 1 guys. Everybody wants to emulate special operations. Everybody wants to emulate SWAT. But what they're not realizing is that SWAT, gang, narcs, whoever, when they're planning an operation, they're executing that operation on their terms, right? The patrol officer is not doing it on their terms. So like they'll take things that SWAT's doing, and it's like, hold on a minute, you don't understand. You have to react in the moment. You don't have the time to think about a lot of these things. So you need to have a playbook going in, and you need to have good habits going in versus trying to emulate people like what you saw that operation. Like, I'm assuming that operation took you guys weeks to put together, right?
I think so. Yeah. We have the benefit of just getting called to the last minute and saying, "Hey, will you come and serve this?" And so we'll get the brief, and then, review the op plan and come up with a plan like a day before. But yeah, they put in weeks of surveillance and control buys and all that stuff. It was for sure.
Right. So like I said, I started my company around the patrol officer to be like, hey man, it is a lot different. The considerations are a lot different in the moment. You don't get to execute a coordinated operation that way. Like you see all these hype videos, like a lot of planning, a lot of training, a lot of execution went into that, or, before they executed rather. versus a patrol officer who doesn't have that luxury.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about, you kind of touched on this a little bit when you were talking about conducting how you phrased it, the most dangerous style of entry for evidence. And you were saying something about like moving quickly and moving in dangerously for the point of like collecting evidence. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit? I was thinking, and what comes to mind, and this is kind of a topic that that tactical Instagram I've seen attack me for, is I made a post a while back where I was talking about doing a dynamic entry on a narcotic search warrant and how we don't think that that's a good tactic. That we reserve dynamic entries for like threat to life situations. So hostage rescue, active shooter, active killing events is when we're moving at a dynamic speed. And we try and do it all the time in training, right? But in real life operation, like we're not running quickly through any sort of structure at a dynamic speed unless there is an immediate threat to life, to human life. And a lot of agencies, it's really common with like narcotics units where, you know, they put, like you said, they put a ton of time and effort. They put weeks, sometimes months into build these cases, and they go to serve these warrants and they're afraid their suspect's going to flush their dope, right? So they go to hit the door and it turns into like a race to the toilet between the suspect and the cops. And they're like trying to get to the toilet first to prevent the guy from flushing the dope. And the problem that we see with that is like when you're moving fast, you know, and you know this, when you're moving fast, you're not able to process information at the same speed as if you're moving at a deliberate pace. And you're a whole lot more likely, if this guy decides he wants to fight, he's going to have a lot more opportunities to get rounds on you and to hurt or kill you if you're running through it at a fast pace. And so it's a higher risk. The way we look at it, it's a higher risk to move dynamic and it's not a risk that we're willing to take for narcotics. Like if the purpose for that is to preserve evidence, it's not worth it. If the purpose is to preserve life, then absolutely.
Yeah. So
I want to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah. So it's the multifaceted problem. So I'm going to kind of explain this in layers, if that's all right. So our SWAT team was a collateral SWAT team, so it was part-time, right? So I spent the majority of my time on narcotics and on the SWAT team as well. And when I had first gotten on, the way things were done was it's a race to the toilet, port the bathroom window. We want to stop them from flushing and yada, yada, yada. And I saw some mistakes were getting made. I don't subscribe that you should be justifying the use of a dynamic entry to preserve evidence. I don't do it. Actually, the narcotics detective in me says, if you're doing a search warrant based on just some CI buys and you're hoping there's dope in the house, that's a poor investigation. What you should be doing is having locked in charges because you intro to UC. You should have locked in charges on your dealer so you could take him anywhere. Because if you're worried about officer safety, well, we can yoke him up anytime, anywhere. And then we can go hit the house and we know it's empty and I don't need to worry about what's going on inside, right? Like that's a 30,000 foot view. Now, I think I read something the other day and it's very, very true. Law enforcement suffers from a severe lack of doctrine. And with that lack of doctrine comes a lack of understanding where guys are like, it's either always dynamic or it's always deliberate. And situations determine whether it's dynamic or deliberate. And that's unequivocally false, where you can start something deliberate and it ends up dynamic. You can start something dynamic and it ends up deliberate. Now, that is up to the officer on the ground, the team leader or the section leader to make that decision. Where I was talking about a dynamic entry in those motel rooms, and this is something that I practiced myself, was the reason I would advocate for a more dynamic entry is because we just talk about ballistics and structures, right? Like we have those big bay windows right there. I don't want to hang out there and do my call outs from the door, even if policy says I have to, right? Like you're going to just try and speed that. I don't want to be there any more than I have to be. It's also a super small room. They know where I'm at. So so I've lost really like surprise and violence of action, or I've lost speed and surprise because I'm like right there and they see me. I've done my knock and announce procedures. So I'm like, well, the only thing we can do now is try and take this dynamically to make up for that a little bit. And we're only doing it because of the size, right? I'm not doing it because it's dope. I'm not advocating for it because, any other reason. That's the sole reason is I'm factoring in the environment that I'm operating in. Now, if it's a larger structure and it's a dope warrant, and I don't know, I don't have a lot of situational awareness or intel on what's going on inside, yeah, we're going to take it deliberately. Because, like you said, you have to factor in the level of training of your guys too. Like, can they process information moving quickly? Can they not only process the information, are their hard skills fine-tuned enough that they can move quickly and make those shots if they had to? Right? Like,
Yeah.
just like it's so many layers that a team leader needs to kind of think about before they're determining this is kind of how we're going to do something. But 99% of guys who aren't aware of all those peripherals are like, it's either always dynamic or always deliberate. You're like, nah, man, that's not true at all. I had a SWAT commander who thought using NVGs was a tactic. And I was like, it's not a tactic, dude. It's a tool. If it's dark, it kind of makes me see.
Makes you see a little better. Yeah.
It's not a tactic.
Yeah.
We would argue about it. And it kind of makes me laugh because that all stems from like the lack of doctrine. And I don't know if you guys in the military ever?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we're all familiar with battle drills, right? Like,
Yeah.
It creates a uniform response to a situation. So you can fall in on any infantry unit for the most part and kind of understand that react to contact and conduct a raid are executed the same way. But law enforcement doesn't have anything like that. One agency does this, the other agency does that. There's 10 million policies here, 10 million policies there.
Yep.
And what does that create? Creates a lack of cohesiveness and nobody's ever on the same page. Down to, even within your own agency, you lose one guy, you bring on one new guy, you have a whole new team. You got to start from scratch again.
Yeah.
Like, and that lack of doctrine creates a lack of understanding on how things work. And that's how we lead to these arguments of like, it's, fucking dynamic here, deliberate there. Like, that's not how it goes. It's way more complicated.
Yeah. Well, I wanted Reagan to weigh in on it. So Reagan is also a part of our training cadre for our SWAT team. And so he trains the new guys and the more seasoned guys, and then does a lot of training with patrol officers and stuff. And so I call myself like a mid to below average level like operator. But I'm fortunate to be around like some high level dudes. So I can like fill in and hold security where needed. But yeah, anyways, I wanted to let Reagan kind of comment on deliberate and dynamic and the uses of both, and like throttle control. He kind of touched on throttle control and
we just like you're saying. I mean, we harp on throttle control a lot. It's just basically you adjust your speed, the speed of your movement through the structure or into the structure or whatever you're looking at based on what's happening at the time, right? We're not going to go into something and say we're going to hit this dope warrant dynamically and just run through the whole house dynamically, despite what's occurring inside or deliberately. You encounter a opposing doors, you might have to take those at a little bit faster pace than you would a single door through a hallway. But even so, on a like the hotel situation we had originally intended to go in there and hit 3 doors. And as we're pulling in, the car thing happened that we talked about. And then the UAS started advising that the guns and dope were coming out of other rooms that we were not intending to hit.
Yeah, those all the stuff was flying out the window. Those are 2 rooms that weren't even on the warrant. So those were extras.
So then within about a 2-minute to 3-minute time frame, all the cops on scene just, they just shoot off to all these doors, and it pretty much ends up about 2 cops per door. Everybody just standing by
closer
everyone's just standing by for the breacher just to, come down the row and hit their door. So, I think at that point specifically, taking it dynamically after we're out there knocking on the door, saying, "Hey, police are out here." I can't get on board with that being a better option, because they already know we're right outside the door. And if we just go diving off in that room, I mean, we're essentially stuck inside, and if something does happen and they're all dark rooms, we can't see in the closets, can't see in the restrooms. And again, I'm not trying to any of the individual clearance tactics that you would have seen through the video. I don't want to try to defend any of those. I'm sure you could point out a million mistakes, and so can we. But I just I wouldn't be able to get on board with just taking those dynamically after sirens going on outside. We're standing in the doorway.
I agree.
Right outside the door.
Not even the intent in that post was not, hey, let's beat up this operation. Right.
So I'm just talking about,
Yeah, so things happen the way they happen as the TL on scene or whoever, you make the call you make and you stand by it, and it's just the way it's supposed to be. But something was told to me, and this is where it gets a little social media like, and or even on the training side, I'm sure you know this as a trainer, is, a cop much better than I could ever hope to be told me one time that words have meaning and people take things at face value. So when you post a video, not you, but a video gets posted and people see it and the caption's like successful outcome. It's like, cool, we're going to do it the way they do it. But now you as a team leader know, like, hey, bro, like 600 things went wrong, but it's been framed as a win. And now someone saw that and they were like, we're going to do it the way they do it. Like, like those dudes were just camping in front of that window. And you were like, man, we shouldn't have been there. That was in a bad spot, blah, 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 blah. But it was framed as a victory. So now someone's like, yeah, no, it's cool, man. They're just like standing in front of this window.
Okay.
Like so that was like the third piece of my post was, when we're framing victories, you got to be very careful about what you post, because words have meaning and people take things at face value. You as the team leader know everything that went wrong on that operation, and you debriefed it and you're putting control measures in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. But other people are now taking this in going, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. It's like, when a social media personality gets on and does something completely wrong, everybody knows it, but people just start emulating them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's another thing. And I've seen it in plenty of other agencies where they just post hot garbage. Perfect example. There was that video going around of that female officer that couldn't handcuff the dude. She was like fumbling with her cuffs, and they were like, this officer took swift action. And then you see all these like comments, people like, good job, officer. And you're like, that was the worst detention I've ever seen in my life. But social media is dangerous because words have meaning and people take things at face value.
Yeah. So I'm curious too, because Ray kind of touched on it. So when you're talking about moving at a dynamic speed, so like in a hotel room, a single room with just like a bathroom closet, and you're saying that the tactic like of moving quickly to get through the threshold and into the room, because of there's no ballistic protection obviously for windows, and there's basically no protection when you're talking about like sheetrock and stucco. So moving through that threshold and into the room quickly as a tactic to be safer than being stuck kind of hanging outside of the room. And I've gotten into some arguments recently in SWAT training when the topic of step center comes up. The idea of clearing as much of the room from the outside as you can prior to making an entry. So the door comes open, and then you're working that, like pieing that door, and clearing as much of that room from the outside. And then when you make your entry, you're just going straight to those hard corners that you couldn't clean up from the outside first, and then doing your scans. And I got into this argument when we were doing a deliberate clearance on a shoot house that we had set up, and I was clearing these rooms from the outside by stepping center and by pieing these doors off, but doing it as quick as I could and accurately hit these targets. And then I was making entry, and we kind of got in the argument of like, well, if you're doing that, you're hanging up the train and you're slowing down the getting the rest of the team into the room. And I jokingly said, what kind of meant it was like, well, if I get smoked in the threshold and I go down, that's probably going to slow the train down also. It's
yeah. And it's a misunderstood concept where clearing as much as you can from the outside means a lot of things to a lot of people, where some people will pie that at a snail's pace because that's what they think it means. Other people will take it too fast and miss a shot or miss something.
Yeah.
The guy who trains a lot and whose skills are dialed in, he's going to know the pace he can move at to where he can accurately process information and accurate shot. So it's one of those things where that's just entirely a training issue. Where again, I tell people like, do what your ass can handle. If you guys don't shoot all the time and you guys don't move through shoot houses fast, you have no business ever running through a shoot house fast, right? Like you just have no business doing it. I've seen tons of, especially SWAT teams will do a ton of deliberate stuff, right? And because what do they say? 80 to 90% of SWAT search warrants are narcotics related, right? And typically they're not going to announce call out deliberate stuff. And that's national level. That's just some data that I've gotten. Like my agency, it's about confirmed. the majority of the stuff we did was narcotics related. But that doesn't mean you're going to be able to execute an HR fast and dynamically because you trained it once 5 months ago.
We don't. I mean, luckily for us, and our team is pretty on board with this. We don't subscribe to that. I mean, obviously, every barricade that we respond to, every narcotics search warrant we respond to, we have time, so we can adjust our plan on scene. So we'll take that deliberately, obviously. But our training, we spend at bare minimum 50% of our training time on dynamic and HR, like scenario based training, or maybe even more than that. Just because when we do get that HR, it's our skills are going to mean a lot more on a call like that than what our skills are going to mean on a barricade. What's that?
Yeah. Are you guys a full-time team?
No.
So our team, our apprehension team, we're all on the SWAT team, and we kind of, I guess, I wouldn't say that we're a full-time team, but we sort of act as our department's full-time component if there's a fallout.
Unit that was like that. Like the majority of us were SWAT. So kind of we're like the unofficial,
exactly.
But yeah, like that's a mindset that your team takes that I wish most people took. Many places that I've talked to don't do it throughout the country. And, even my team that I was on at one point, they didn't have that mindset. And my whole thing is if you can do it fast, you can do it slow. But if you train slow, you won't find speed. That's just with anything, right? Like you don't learn to run fast by running slow. You don't learn to drive fast by driving slow. You don't shoot fast by shooting slow. It's just not a thing.
Yeah. Did you guys do mostly dynamic when you were on your team?
It was situationally dependent. Whatever the situation called for. But no, I can't put my finger on it. And my team was very good about. We don't call it like we're not just. I've worked with teams that were like we're strictly a dynamic team. And I was like, well, that's because even getting into the case law portion and the trial portion and the optics portion, like there's a lot that needs to be juggled. Actually, I was on the unit I was on. We were big on like takeaways and stuff, right? So like, if it was Harry, I don't want to take a dude down in his castle. Let's do a takeaway. Let's get him somewhere else to where he can't fight us, and then we can do that search warrant on the house with a little more peace of mind. Depending on the severity of the crime, and as a good SWAT team's going to think outside the box like that too, right? Like, that's another thing, and I've talked about this in the past. Like, hitting the house is not the default go-to. You don't like the Charlotte incident where all those cops were shot and killed. You have a felon in possession. You have warrants for felon in possession of firearms, so you decide to take him at his house. Well, operationally speaking, where do you think this guy's guns are going to be?
Yeah,
in the house, right? We couldn't establish a pattern of life and. Maybe say he walks his dog every morning. We'll take him while he's walking his dog, and then we'll go get those guns later.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like just thinking outside the box. And I think a lot of teams are very one-track minded. It's like we got to hit the house. That's just what we do.
Sure. Yeah. So I 100%. Everything said 100%. No disagreements there. I've been in this current assignment in my current position for about a year as the supervisor, and one of the kind of like adjustments that I've made is. When we're dealing with the suspect in the house, and I hear everything you're saying about him, that's his castle, his guns, and his stuff. But if I know he's in that house, like I've got PID, he's in there, like that's actually a pretty simple problem to solve, like on the SWAT side. Like that's a simple barricade. Like we get a good perimeter set so he can't get out, and then we conduct announcements. And I'd say, depending on the crime and the person, half the time, maybe more, they're going to just come out and surrender, and the surrender call out's going to solve the problem. The other half the time, they're going to barricade, and then we just have a barricade. And, we have ways of making it hot and spicy in there and other tricks that we can do to get them to come out. And I was a lot more comfortable with that. And this isn't in every single situation, right? Everything is different, situation dependent, obviously. But I was a lot more comfortable with that than like, if say he's wanted for a shooting and we think he may or may not be armed, and we're like, okay, we're gonna wait till he's getting to the car as he's coming out, and as he's getting to his car, we're gonna block him in, we're gonna jump out, we're gonna take him right there. And I'm okay with doing that. Like there's an element of risk that I'm okay with, but the problem when he's out in the open, now if he gets in that car, like you said, it could be used as a weapon. We'll get a pursuit going with this guy, and we have the public to worry about. Like, if he's out in the open and he's got the gun and he wants to, and now we're out on foot and we're confronting him, there could be an officer involved shooting, and there's inherent risk to the job. I understand that, but I felt like in a lot of cases, maybe not every single time, but in a lot of cases, when you're trying to do that, you're trying to take this guy in the open as he's getting in his car, as he's getting out of his car, that there are so many more unknowns that we don't have. There's so many more variables that we're not able to control, because suspect gets a vote, right? Then when he is in his house and we know he's in his house, again, he could be in there with a whole arsenal of weapons and, all sorts of things, but a barricade has got a pretty standard, simple formula to solve the barricade. Whereas open air takedown, there is an infinite number of ways that this thing could go sideways. You know what I mean?
There's there's two things on that. Is one, I agree with you, right? Like we want to pin him in place. That's the ideal situation, right? Like pin him in place, take away his ability to fight, and just have him come out to us, right? We don't even want to go into him. We want him. That's the ideal. Now, if you're looking at the data of like how that's working out, it's actually not working out. Most guys are killed on approach or on perimeter, right?
Yeah.
Like using that same tactic. And again, it's not an if, it's a when thing. Again, now we go back into, 99.9% of the time, suspects comply. If you run the numbers, I ran some numbers the other day. It was like, of the 80,000 SWAT callouts a year, it was like 0.00027%, right? So like you have a good chance of taking them in without a problem, but only because they're compliant. But when they comply, I say this all the time, untrained individuals are hurting or killing multiple cops in single sittings at break rates lately. Why? Because, and now it goes into the second part, lack of doctrine, lack of SOP development. Your team may have a rough SOP, but can you pull me out a book of SOPs that says this is within reason? Obviously, things change on the objective, but this is the framework of how we conduct this. This is the framework of how we conduct that. Most agencies are going to tell you no. So like you said, if I'm going to take him when he's going to his car, we developed an SOP on things like that. Like, okay, cool. Like when we do course of action development and we're all sitting there saying like, okay, what's the enemy's most likely course of action? What's his most dangerous course of action?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, he can get into his car and get away. Okay, cool. So now what do we need? We need a team to block that getaway vehicle. Right? So when we're doing our takedown, a car needs to come in and pin that vehicle in the driveway or pin that vehicle in place. So even if he does get to it, he can't get away. Okay, what could he do then? Oh, he can run back in the house. Okay, cool. So let's make a containment team, get between him and the house, the door. Right? Like now you're adjusting this framework, and as you're implementing that on actual live ops, that SOP is going to change based on things you see, but at least you have a framework.
Yeah.
Now, law enforcement on the whole only has the framework of we hit the house, we set up perimeter. Well, that's a mess because, and I've done this too, man. You send a patrol guy on perimeter, or you send a SWAT guy on perimeter, and he's trying to get a good view on the back, but he doesn't even realize that he sacrificed cover to get a better view on the back, and now he's out there with his ass in the breeze.
Yeah.
Right. We're seeing officers on perimeter get killed. Burnsville, Montana. I know somebody was on that incident. You just hold in perimeter, nothing's going to happen, and shots start cracking out the window, and now you're just shooting people on perimeter. And then we're always using typically the same breach points. Front door. Bad guy knows where we're coming from.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like so. All right. Well, how do we mitigate that? Well, maybe we just now again, like to your point, depends on the crime also. Right? Like if we have to take this guy now, you have to do what you have to do. It is what it is. The only thing you can do is just layer some control measures. So I always say, like, how many people have if you can't find cover, bring cover mentality to perimeter units?
Yeah.
A lot tell me no. Like, I'll just find a tree. Okay, there's no trees. What can you do? Bring your car. Bring
a car, bring a shield, bring some cover.
I'll let you bring something.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't think like that. It can't find cover, bring cover. All right, well, we've kind of helped our perimeter. Get skinny behind that cover. Don't just stand there like a bonehead, like we all know guys do. I've done it, right? Like, and I'm only saying these things because I've made these mistakes too. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't do that ever again. Yeah. And then, like you're saying, like, you're going to roll into a gas plant? Cool. Like, this is just how we handle business. This is just how we do it. Okay, well, that didn't work. All right, well, what are we going to do? Start breaking down walls? Yeah, maybe you got a rook. Let's just start chipping away at that structure. But again, there needs to be that SOP development. A lot of places, not saying you guys, but a lot of places don't have that. And it causes issues because now you're getting similar incidents with 10,000 different responses. Depending on whoever the sergeant is, who's the lieutenant, who's the team leader, you're going to get a different response. Whereas if you're factoring in data and you're training and testing your TTPs, you're going to start creating a more uniform response in a way that works versus not work.
That's an issue that we have definitely identified here at the department, and not necessarily amongst the SWAT team, but our patrol shift and just, what we get called out to assist with. So like, we'll say shift 1 will respond to, a barricaded assault with a deadly weapon suspect. Like, the spectrum is so vast compared to how, say shift 4 would respond to it. And it's all boss dependent, officer dependent. And it had created quite some issues that we've been working through over, like, I guess, probably about the past year. And it does seem like we're making a little bit of headway, but it's definitely, it's an issue everywhere. It's for sure an issue here. And
how are you correcting that? By like giving them a framework?
So we put together a class just called Tactics for Patrol, and we're just trying, as many people as the department will let come through it, and as often as we can host it, as they'll allow us to host it, we'll have it and take about 15 dudes from patrol and supervisors, run them through a day of vehicle tactics, a day of, clearance, and then 2 days of just straight scenarios. And like, how are you working through this barricaded subject? Break it down, run it again. How are you working through this, like this HR that patrol responded to that, you don't have time to wait for SWAT to get there. This thing kicked off quick. You got to get in there. How are you handling it? What's your criteria? When are you going to launch a crisis entry? When are you going to launch a deliberate rescue? How are you going to do that? What are you thinking about when you do it? What are you establishing these hard and fast go no criteria as soon as you get there? As soon as you start identifying these, weak points in the suspect or vulnerabilities presented to you by the suspect or the victim. If you see that once, are you going to capitalize it on the second time? Capitalize on it second go around? So just trying to kind of build some sort of
standard.
Yeah, there is no standard now, so we're trying to set a standard.
Operating procedure, right? Like creating a framework for a uniform response to typical incidents you'll find. And that is the biggest thing that's missing in law enforcement, and it always makes me laugh. Like when I was teaching at the agency and I would say like, oh, hey, what's the priority in a hostage rescue? And they'd be like, taking out the bad guy. And I'd be like, hostage rescue, right? Like if we could
rescuing the hostage, it's literally in the name.
Right. Yeah. Like, and it's always like coming from the same officers that were like, I've been doing this 25 years. And you're like, how'd you not know that? Like it was always like the most seasoned dudes or the most arrogant dudes that had these blank responses to the questions that you were asking them. And it's like, yeah, because you've gone your whole career without knowing any form of doctrine. You've just been winging it on every single call. Like, granted, maybe something kind of develops, but that's subjective to you. It's just how you do things, and that's another problem in policing where you could have the same call and you're going to get 5 different responses from 5 different officers. But what you want to try and do is control the outcome. And how do you do that? Again, by creating SOP.
And surprisingly, you're talking about the very tenured officer. The response that we got when we just put on this class was the exact opposite. These guys wanted the training and they'd never been provided it. And the crazy thing to me was that our department will send these cops out knowing they're going to have to respond to something like this. And never in their entire career, despite maybe a 4-hour block in the academy, had they been trained on any sort of tactical response to either a barricade or a hostage rescue situation. And these guys were happy for it. They were, they welcomed it, and it was just crazy to me that without providing any training to these cops, they're still willing to, nail them to the wall over mistakes they've made on these calls. You know what I mean? They say, review the body worn camera footage. Hey, you fucked this up. Now you're screwed. But never once have they been provided any sort of training.
I mean, it's funny. I was talking with my girl about it last night. She's still active. She's been on almost 20 years. And we were talking about, PGOs and Power DMS. And they're like, dude, they update 50 of these a month and we don't even know what changes and this and this and this. And it's like, yeah, but they're going to hold your feet to the fire because you signed it. You don't know what changed. They didn't tell you. You have no clue. And they expect you to remember 50 different things a month and then still like operate within this thing. And the people that are judging you couldn't handle that situation any better. Should a mistake come up. And I think that's an inherent problem with a lot of places. But since we're talking to law enforcement specific, like I'll say it out loud. I had a chief who didn't know you could search a trunk of a car to the odor of marijuana, which was allowed at the time. It's still allowed, but she argued with me. She's like, "That's a locked compartment. You need a warrant." And I was like, "You literally talking about how you're a cop for 30 years and you don't know this?" It's just mind-boggling to me, man. But the LE administration side is crazy. But like when I put on trainings, like I have a small unit tactics class that I put on, and like some of the hardest chargers are the most seasoned guys, and they say the same thing. Like, I don't know these things. I was never taught these things. And to me, it's wild that in 20, 25 years, they've gone to next to no trainings, but expected to perform at a certain level, which is unrealistic. But I think even in the past, I'll say 5 years, I've noticed on the whole a real shift towards the acceptance of training in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And even coming, we did a podcast about this not too long ago, where I think civilian agencies are having much more of an effect on influencing police training, like outside agencies. And now it's starting to trickle down. Like, all these dudes are going to these outside entities and they're bringing it back to their agency. It's not even the agency creating this stuff. They're going elsewhere. They're finding it. They're bringing it back. And it's getting a real good response. So like in the past 5 years, I'd imagine in another 5 years, it's going to change drastically as well, like in the positives.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot with us in our department as well. Just guys going out, getting training from other places and bringing it back and it bleeding through. And that's been like on our team specifically. That's how a lot of our doctrine, our SOPs have changed I've been on our SWAT team for almost 15 years, and it's night and day different. I was actually talking to our captain yesterday about it, and I said, like, I went from being like a top dude, like one of the top guys, to where now like I can barely keep up. And this is kind of a cool thing to see. But the shift has come from, like you said, from the outside, learning, picking up training from other places, kind of examining our ways of doing things and being honest about our shortcomings. And that's why, like, I was wanting to do this because, and like I said, I didn't take any offense to anything you said. Like, nobody's going to be more critical of us and our tactics than we are. So there's like not really anything that anybody on the outside could say that's going to ever bother me or hurt my feelings, because I'll be like, yeah, actually, you missed these other 5 things. Like, yeah, you noticed that, but you didn't notice this other stuff that we did too.
Yeah, and it's funny. I get, sometimes I get crap, and it's you reached out and you were really professional about it. It's super cool. And this is why, we're having this chat. I don't have chats with a lot of people that sometimes would be like, I was on that and you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, sometimes, I don't take my own advice where I'm like, people take things at face value, and I'll post something to prove a point or to discuss a topic, but people see it and they go, oh, you're talking about that agency. I'm like, no, man. Like, read the words that are on the paper. Like, it's illustrative of the concept that we're talking about. And you use just like we use body worn camera, we use actual video now because 1, we can, and 2, it shows you that it's actually happening. It's not just me saying it. So there's validation behind the point that you're trying to make. Like, hey, this is reinforcing that point with evidence. It's weird. The camps that I see, it's like you still have like, it's probably 60-40. 60% of guys are like, hey man, like, let's talk about this. Like, blah, 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 blah. And I don't like coming in trying to judge people's operations, which is why I don't do that, because obviously it'd be fucking ridiculous of me. But then you get the 40% that are just like, it doesn't matter. It had a good outcome. And I'm like, and your train of thought is why things go wrong, right? Because you don't even know what you're doing wrong because no one's shown you. And nobody's fought you.
Yeah.
You'll
for sure.
That are on teams that are like, oh, I've done 1,000 warrants or whatever. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, how many times have you met active resistance? Oh, well, like none. I'm like, okay, cool. So you don't really know if that works.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've done your knock and announce and you've done your call out and everybody came out and the clearance method, the CQB that you used inside was on an empty house. So you actually have no idea. Right? Because you've never been exposed to that.
I really don't like credentialism where someone's like, oh, I've got this and this is my resume and I've done this and this and this and that. And for me, it's more important is what you're saying actually makes sense?
Yeah.
Like, this could be your first day on the job, but are you saying something that makes sense? And you could be a 25-year like idiot also, so like
merit of the context of your words versus, it's like guys when they'd be like, well, I've been in shooting. And it's like, slow down, bro. You shot a 60-year-old dude. He was reaching his pants and turns out there was nothing in there. Like, calm down. Right. Like certain things are just not validators, like being in shootings or, I've been on the job 30 years. Like, cool. You didn't tell anybody 25 of it was in admin.
Nice. All right. I think that pretty much wraps it up. So, Pat, thank you for coming out and talking to us. For the people that are listening, how can they find you? Where can they find your stuff? And we'll link to it in our description.
Police post training, and then also Apex Training Concepts. You can catch us on there too. Hit us up anytime on Instagram, and I pride myself in trying and answering every message that I get. So, any questions, feel free to just reach out.
Thank you, man. Thanks, Reagan, for talking.
Take it easy, bro.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and stay frosty.